There we go. And thank you, George.
Yep.
Will the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Wednesday, January 5th, 2022, please come to order. This evening's meeting will be a virtual planning and zoning meeting hosted by Zoom. During this meeting, our procedures will be as follows. 1, when you first enter the meeting, you will be in the virtual waiting room until the meeting host admits you. 2, please be aware that your camera, if you have one, and your microphone will be muted by the meeting host when you enter the meeting. You can turn on your camera at any time so you can be seen by others when and if you choose to. In order to run an efficient and orderly meeting in this virtual environment, unless stated otherwise by the meeting chairman during the meeting host will keep everyone other than the commission members muted. You will still be able to hear everything said by commission members, even if you're muted and your camera is not on. There will be the opportunity for public comment during the public hearing, at which time public participants will be unmuted. 3, the secretary will read the legal call of the meeting as published according to Governor Lamont's executive order. 4, during public hearing, the applicant will be invited to present the application, explaining to the commission and others present what is being requested. The meeting host will share all related documents on the screen as needed. In addition, all applications and supporting materials for each application on the agenda are available through the public meeting calendar page of the town's website, www.ci.guilford.ct.us, and also through a direct link on the planning and zoning page. 5, comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. There will be then clarifying questions from commissioners. 6, there will then be the opportunity for clarifying questions from the audience. Please raise your hand through the Zoom platform and wait to be called on and unmuted. First, those who wish to support the application may come forward. Second, those who oppose the application can then come forward. As this is a public hearing and must be recorded, it is necessary for speakers to identify themselves each time they speak by stating their name and address. 7, the applicant will then have the opportunity to address any questions or concerns raised by the public or commissioners. 8, once the public hearing is closed, the applicant is free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearing and the regular meeting, during which the commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of this commission and has the right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. 9, decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Planning and Zoning Department at 203-453-8039 or emailing planning.zoning@ci.guilford.ct.us after 9 a.m. 10, all actions taken tonight by the commission will be on a roll call vote. All commissioners and staff will identify themselves to the record before speaking. Seated this evening are the following members. If you could raise your hand and just say hello. Sean Cosgrove. Thank you. Frank DeAndrea.
Hi.
Jamie Stein.
Well,
Alan Brown.
Hi.
Richard Wallace.
Good evening.
Scott Edmond.
Hello.
Bill Freeman.
Hello.
And I am Phil Johnson. Given that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Bill, you will be our alternate this evening, but we would value your input. Just unless someone recuses themselves, you won't be voting. Staff present this evening are George Kroll, town planner and current acting zoning enforcement officer, and Lisa Piombino, planning and zoning administrative assistant. This meeting will be recorded via the Zoom platform and made available on the town website for viewing. The secretary will now read the legal notice.
Thank you. Notice is hereby given that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on January 5th, 2022. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting will be conducted through a web and phone meeting only. Attendees are advised to not go to the regular community center location because a physical meeting will not take place. See below sign in for information for a Zoom meeting. The following applications will be heard. Hubbard Road LLC, Hubbard Road, map 79, lot 48 is on I-2, re-subdivision 2 lots. Hubbard Road LLC, Hubbard Road, map 79, lot 48, zone I-2, site plan approval for construction of a CGS 8-30G affordable housing project, including 2 buildings, parking area, septic systems, utilities, and stormwater management area. Copies of these applications are available for inspection in the Planning and Zoning Office and on the town's website, www.ci.guilford.ct.us. At this hearing, persons may attend by either phone or web connection and shall be heard. All written correspondence shall be submitted at planning.zoning@ci.guilford.ct.us. Documents are available at the Planning and Zoning Office, dial 203-453-8039 for assistance. Dated Guilford, Connecticut, this 14th day of December, 2021. Phil Johnson, Chairman.
I hate to do this to you, Scott, but I think there's a more updated.
Yeah, that's not right.
I know.
Hubbard Road is
So
off.
just so everyone knows, Hubbard Road is tabled to the 19th. And
There's
You're
no-
gonna have to put it. You're gonna have to
There
put
is
it.
no other legal notice. That is the legal notice.
There is no other, there's another agenda that
There-
reflects that.
Well, the agenda is different, certainly, but
The legal notice is right. Hubbard Road was supposed to be heard tonight, but it's been continued.
Okay, so George can,
It's not actually continued until you vote to continue it, but we're going to recommend that you continue it.
all right, well, someone like to make a vote to continue Hubbard Road and we can address.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Sean Cosgrove,
Yes.
Frank DeAndrea,
Yes.
Jamie Stein,
Yes.
Alan Brown,
Yes.
Richard Wallace,
Yes.
Scott Edmund,
yes.
Bill Freeman. Sorry. I'll also vote yes. George, how do we technically handle the? We didn't have to legal notice Eagle View because they were on our last meeting and we
Yeah,
continued. Is that
that's
correct?
That's right. That was
Yep.
noticed. That's already been noticed properly.
Good. So we've tabled Hubbard Road. Russ, I'll kick it back to you. I know you had completed the lion's share of your presentation. Is there anything else that you'd like to answer, or do you want us to get into comments from town staff? I'm happy to follow your lead on it.
Sure. I think we have made a few updates in response to the town staff, so I think it'd be wise for us to go quickly through those, and then we can jump right into reading in those letters and respond with any questions that you have. So actually, I'm Russell Campaign, CK Architects, 131 Boston Street, and I'm here again with Seamus from Lorero Engineering, and Joe Gaudio and Kurt Wittes are on the line as well, if anything should come up, as the owners of the property. And so I think I'll do the same as I did last presentation and pass it to Seamus to address the site issues, mostly in response to Janice's comments. And then he'll put it back to me to go through quickly the updates to the architectural plans.
So I just have a
Sure.
question. So Russ, are the modifications or any changes in response to the letters we already have
Mhm.
from Janice and Kevin?
Yes. Yes, they are. And we turned them in and they were posted on the website. So you have that documentation of these updates that's our modified proposal for the
Thank you.
application.
And as you may or may not be aware, Russ, we have a modified letter from Janice dated today. I don't know if you
Yep.
received that or not, so.
We did receive that, and that was actually her response to our resubmission.
Okay. You're on then.
Okay. So why don't I pass it to Seamus and he can start with the site updates, and then he can pass it back to me and I'll present the architectural changes.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Thanks, Russ. And thank you everyone for having us again tonight. My name is Seamus Moran. I'm a professional engineer in Connecticut, representing the applicants, work for Lorero Engineering Associates. And just like last month, I'll just go through a couple of the items that were changed from the last plans you saw to the plans before you today. And those are in response to the comments we received just prior to the last meeting that we obviously did not have a chance to update prior to the last meeting. We have updated it since then. We provided those revisions to Janice and Kevin just the other day. They already provided responses, which
Hey, huh?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I thought Alan was talking to me. I'm sorry.
Be able to share your screen if you want to.
Yeah, I'll share it now. So there's 7 items that we'll go over. So let me share my screen now.
And
We have
Seamus, were these changes made in response to Janice's December 15th letter?
Yes, correct. December 15th letter,
Thank you.
of course. So there were 7 minor items. The first item is the front setback. She asked us to change to 30 feet. So we did that. We had the underlying setback distance on there. So this is for the Guilford Town Center District, 30 feet. So we changed that. The underground electric previously was shown in coming on the east side. She asked us to relocate that to the west side outside the Limlaw line here. So all we did was relocate that from a pole on the east side of Whitfield in front of the property to the pole on the west side. So that was another minor change. That was item 2. We added some call outs to the utility platforms. One on this utility platform here shows what the elevation of that platform is. And one, we modified the call out for these 2 platforms, which you can't see at this scale, but I just wanted to point out they are minor and they are on the revised plans. One item is the outlet number 2, which is here, which is this discharge pipe. This was shown shown just beyond the coastal jurisdiction line before. We just rotated that slightly. It has to daylight at elevation 5 to provide adequate pitch coming out of this manhole. So we are still down at elevation 5, but the coastal jurisdiction line is 4. So by rotating it and getting it out just outside the coastal jurisdiction line, we satisfied that comment. So this location of this discharge pipe is slightly different than the last plans. The sidewalk along Pages Lane, there's a couple things. So first of all, it was shown as pavers before, where it's now just called out as, under the site layout plan, it's now just called out as a concrete walkway, consistent with the town standards. We also realigned the roadway slightly, where it was flared out a little bit more previously on the east side of Pages, where it connects to Whitfield. We essentially just extended the projection of Pages now, so that way we can terminate the walkway and the accessible ramp to show the crosswalk. And we added an inset because it's just off the page, an inset in the bottom left corner, which shows how that crosswalk is just west of the driveway to the east. So now this is the end of the walk. As a result of realigning the road, the crosswalk ends just west of the access drive on the other side of Whitfield. A couple last items. We added a stop sign and stop bar in Pages Lane. Up here, as you can see, a stop sign and stop bar before Whitfield. And that is it for the plan revisions. And the only other item is we provided the FEMA letter. We were in the appeal period before for the Lomer, and it was supposed to be effective on December 17th, as long as there were no appeals. There were no appeals. We received that letter from FEMA, but now the Lomer that we discussed previously is officially effective December 17th. So that is active now. So those are the minor plan changes. If there are any questions, I can take them, or I think I'd rather just pass to Russ and we can kind of go over the minor changes that Russ has, if that's okay.
Fine with me. Russ, you good?
Yep, I am. So I will share here. Okay, are you seeing my site plan?
Yep.
Fantastic. So at the request of Janice, she also mentioned that she felt that the path that we had leading out to the eastern side of the property into the easement might attract a dangerous condition with people wanting to cross Whitfield. So we've removed that path, looped it back through the property for internal access, and consolidated the only crossing at the crosswalk at her request. And then as well, we at Jamie's comments about the lookout, we are very constrained as to where we can place this outside of the FEMA flood zone. We want to be outside of the VE zone, outside of the LIMWA zone, outside of the 25-foot setback that's required for the critical coastal resource. So what we were able to do is move it about 3 feet off of the back of paving, shape it a little bit more organically, put a bench in the middle, and then buffer it with some additional planting. And so I think in general, we've enhanced that condition to make it feel a little bit more special as a lookout. But I don't know that we can do much more given how boxed in we are with our access in that location. The lighting, as you had seen, we gave her additional information about the lighting selections we've made, and she, on her letter, felt as though we had satisfied the concerns that she had for the Dark Skies initiative. And I think we also submitted additional landscape information. You can see you can see that the lookout sits a little bit more. It's organically shaped and sort of tucked into the landscape. And our landscape plan, we updated that area. We took this path and bollard lights off. And so in general, I think we have a very positive response from her. Two items I would like to bring up during our presentation that I know will likely also have further discussion after the letters are read in are the trash and recycling that Janice has brought up. We are proposing to put rolling bins into each of the garages for each of the 12 units so that they can manage their own trash. They'll pull them out to a location that the garbage truck can come in and access and pick up. And just treat it as though it's a residential single-family home, setup, as opposed to a consolidated dumpster location in which all of these owners would have to carry their trash to a centralized location that has the risk of wind blowing debris and animals and other things along those lines. So I guess I was a little, I didn't really understand her concerns with the storage of rolling trash bins within each of the garages. We can put a little fenced in area on the sides of the buildings if there is concern, but for us, we'd much rather hide the trash storage. And I think that's the way most people handle their trash is keep it in their garages and then pull it out once a week. So I'm not sure how to react to her condition, but she felt that we should have a consolidated trash, but I'll put that to you and just wanted to mention our feeling and decision-making on that. And then the eagle will be another topic, as Bill brought up. The old nest is here, and the new nest is located about 300 feet to the south of the old nest location. That actually did improve our situation a little bit as far as the buffer, because you can see the old nest sits in this location on town GIS. We're about 300 feet further south, and the 660-foot setback is actually outside of any work area. Now that 660 feet comes from the federal, what is it called? Federal Bald Eagle Management Guidelines. And that was released in 2007 when the bald eagle was removed from the endangered species list, as well as it's not even threatened species now. It's totally removed from any listing. But those guidelines were put in place mainly around a couple of laws that are federal, associated with it being the federal bird and having protections for it that way. And so these guidelines summarize the state and federal requirements for eagle management. And the suggestion on their chart for category B construction, which is the building construction of 3 or more stories, which we are, if the activity is visible from the nest, which it is, and if there are similar activities closer than 1 mile from the nest, which I think applies here, given the activities that are in the area between the construction of 66 High Street and the other residential construction in the area, as well as the old activities on this site, it suggests a 660-foot buffer. And so we're feeling as though we're actually adhering to those guidelines in the way that we're presenting this. Now, we're calling the development of the property Eagle View. We obviously see this as a huge asset for the tenants. I think they will see it as a real benefit to have views to the Eagle, and so we want to do everything we can to be sensitive to that. But we also are under pressures to continue the project and be able to actually move through construction. So we'd love to have some discussion about what constraints we can put on this that might allow us to continue to work as we're aiming to try and start as soon as we can in March in the construction phase of things of this, which would start obviously with site construction. Now we are focusing our attention on not using any driven pile systems. So we're looking at a helical pile for our foundation system or our spread footing to minimize that sort of noise. And our construction itself, I think, will be minimized and all outside of that 660-foot suggested buffer. At the very least, with Kevin's wording, we would love it to say if we do feel we have to have a restriction between the period that he's asking, we'd love it to say exterior construction or site construction to be not performed during that period. He currently just says all construction. Now, I would think we would be able to do interior construction on the site, because that would affect us next year finishing out units, and would be a real hardship on us to also shut down for 3 months when we're doing finish work on the interior of the building. But we'd love to have a discussion with you about a way to allow us a little bit more flexibility through the winter months and into the early spring to allow us to start as soon as we can. So with that, I think we can close our portion of the hearing and then go into the letter read-ins and then be able to react to any questions that come up. I'll
Thank you very
stop
much.
sharing here.
My way of seizing control. Frank, do you want to take the first letter from Janice Plasiak?
Sure. Do you want to pop it up or you want me to pull it up?
I think, hold on. I got it here. Hold on, ready? And take a
Okay,
deep
this is
breath,
to the,
Frank.
got it. This is to the Planning and Zoning Commission from Janice Plasiak, the town engineer, dated December 15th on 405 Whitfield Street. It's a special permit site plan and coastal site plan application. I reviewed the site development plan.
Frank, you're reading the old memo.
Sorry, that's my bad.
Yeah, we don't want to have to read that one.
No. So hold on a second.
She's going dated today, yesterday, I think.
I have it up, Phil, if you like.
Okay, if you want to,
I got one.
Oh, you got it too, January?
Yeah, I got it. I grabbed it. Okay, so 405 Whitfield Street, the special permit site plan coastal site plan application dated January 5th, 2022 from Janice Plasiak.
Right, right.
Okay, I have reviewed the revised plans for the above referenced property submitted on January 4th, 2022, along with the attached letter I received from Leorio existing survey. The submitted existing conditions property survey showed the temporary fill piles from the prior owner of the property, which were never permitted and are no longer in place. To clarify for the record, it appears that the 30-foot setback along Pages Lane is being taken from the incorrect property line. There's a separate parcel, Assessor's Map 28, Lot 8A, which is 12-foot strip of land between that line and the site for development. The setbacks should be from the parcel line of the development parcel or separate lot that would need to be merged with the development and parcel to use the line shown for the setback. The front setback line has been changed to 30 feet. Recommended condition of approval: the development parcel in the 12-foot strip parcel along the private road labeled as, quote, Pages Lane, end quote, shall be legally merged by a filing on the land records prior to the application of a building permit. Development in a floodplain. We have received the confirmation from FEMA that the map changes are effective as of December 17th, 2021. A detailed review of the buildings will be done at the time of the building permit application when more detailed plans are submitted. Also, the tank pump chamber for Building A septic system was moved further into the wave action area rather than to the west, as I suggested, for these to be less vulnerable areas as well. The applicant indicated that moving the tanks under consideration, but needs to be coordinated with the health department. A detailed review of the building plan, flood compliance for the proposed buildings will be done at the time of the building in the flood hazard permit application and prior to an issuance of a building permit. Stormwater management. The applicant has clarified their intent, and I don't have any concerns with their revised plans for stormwater management. Solid waste and recycling. The applicant said that the individual rollaway barrels are proposed in lieu of a dumpster. Where will all these rollaways be housed? I don't find this to be a sanitary solution for a 12-unit townhouse style development. Recommended condition of approval: garbage and recycling dumpsters in an enclosure accessible to garbage trucks shall be included on the plan. Individual barrels shall not be utilized for trash and recycling on the site. Lighting. My previous comments have been addressed with the revised submission. Site access and landscaping. My comments have been addressed with the revised submission. Recommendation of approval: the signed easement document and map approved by the town attorney for the 10-foot wide public access easement, including the viewing platform, shall be submitted to the town before any certificate of occupancies are issued. Other environmental considerations. My comments below, as previously stated, have not been addressed with substantive documentation. The commission should decide if they would like more evidence or further explanation than the statements provided in the letter submitted to me attached. Going from an industrial use to a residential use, the applicant should provide documentation that environmental due diligence has been done through the environmental assessment and testing, if necessary, for this change in use. Development of this site is approximately 500 feet to 600 feet from an active eagle's nest. The applicant should provide the commission with documentation of compliance with any state, federal regulations that may be in place for protection of the eagle's nest.
Thank you.
And I did that all off of that.
It's pretty good, Frank. Your vision's holding up. So, Russ, can I ask, from your experience and anyone else chip in, is it normal? I mean, I don't store my garbage in my garage. Is there a reason that she's detailing that as a potential problem?
Well, there's a few things that Janice, as the town engineer, is weighing in on that I'm not sure is in her purview, but I would think that would be a public health code issue. There's nothing that I know of as an ordinance that says you can't put your trash and recycling in your garage. And she didn't reference anything that was out of alignment with a code policy that the town had. So I was confused by her.
Let me add that
Yeah.
I didn't speak to Janice about this, but as a resident of a similar townhouse style development, Rollwood, residents there stored their trash and recycling in bins in their garages and bring them out themselves on garbage pickup day. And it's much nicer than having a central dumpster location for the 12 or 15 units that are served in the Paddock Lane section of Rollwood, in my opinion. So it sounds like I would think that the market would prefer that solution than having a common dumpster location, which suggests a much more commercial environment than what's being proposed here.
I guess the only concern I would have is if had a particularly stinky batch of garbage, that you might be more inclined to leave it outside the garage door, and it might be more subject to getting tipped over or animals getting into it because this is a smaller vessel than a dumpster. But
again, as a resident of a condominium, peer pressure is a real significant thing. And if you put the smelly garbage out in front of your place, your next door neighbor is going to be right on top of you because they live right next door. So you're going to be very careful about doing that sort of thing. And the condominium officers are going to be very diligent about telling you that if you put garbage out there that tends to blow away or is otherwise disturbed, you're going to be persona non grata in that development.
okay. No.
Thanks, George.
I've-
Phil, this is Jamie. I just wanted to say that I kind of interpreted her comment a little bit differently. My concern, I mean, we live not very close to any neighbors, but we do store our garage and our garage containers, or our garbage containers in our garage. But my concern is more around trash pickup day. Will a vehicle come into the site and pick up from each individual residence? Or are you expecting 12, potentially 24 containers with both garbage and recycling to go out to Pages Lane? How is the actual pickup happening?
Because we have fire truck access, there is room for a hammer turn at the end. And so I think it might be a little bit more fee associated with Schweitzer or whoever you choose, but they will come into a driveway and pick up, and people do that at long driveways and such all the time. So it's just a negotiation. And we'd be happy to put a condition on that the Condo Association, pay for trash pickup within the complex as opposed to it being on the street. So I hope that addresses your concern.
So Russ, this is Sean. So there will be a condo association.
Oh, yes, it's a 12-unit condo, shared ownership.
Right.
They'll
So-
own to the walls.
All right, so, they will set their own rules within the boundaries of what we establish as the, conditions for approval.
Right, the actual developer will develop the rules and the
Right.
ordinance for the condominium, and we would incorporate any conditions into those rules. I think the Condo Association, can change rules and such to some extent after they're fully established, but that we would incorporate anything along those lines if there were concerns along those lines that you wanted us to establish.
But I think George's comments are, are relevant here because, if you're part of an association, you got to come to agreement, and we just have to set the right confines for how they establish those rules. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, based on George's comments, you hate to go against the town engineer, but I also understand that, having accountability for individual unit owners
Right.
is something we can expect also.
I agree with that.
So just to
I
address
agree.
can I address one other topic in her letter? Her letter speaks to the 12-foot wide independent parcel that runs along Pages Lane. And we have measured throughout the whole process, as did the previous approved site plan in 2015 that this commission actually approved, measured their setback from the edge of that parcel associated with this. So we've been consistent. This has never come up before, and it wasn't a requirement of the previous approval to merge the properties. And so, we feel that she's kind of weighing in on zoning issues as a town engineer. Now, I went directly to George and I had a conversation as the zoning officer and the planner as to how we should approach this. And we've had a consistent relationship with that property line. So again, I'm not sure why she's weighing in on zoning issues and zoning compliance issues as the town engineer, with George being, I think, in control of that. And I'd love George to speak to that a little bit. But we all know that Pages Lane is a convoluted ownership with easements in the town to access to their property and a lot of things. We just want to not encumber our process here unnecessarily associated with that. And as I said, we have been consistent with the previous approval that this board approved with no condition of merger. And we've been measuring our setback just as they did, throughout the whole of the process. And this came up fairly late in the process that this was a concern, and it's raised by the town engineer, which I'm not exactly sure how that works into this discussion.
Yes, I did talk to her about it today. I don't really understand the logic for her proposal or her thought. You're correct. We consistently interpreted it based on the previous approvals from the property line as you've shown it. It obviously has no substantive impact. It's not like we're dealing with a setback that would affect another property owner in some way or another use in some way. So I think if the commission finds that the way you've proposed it is appropriate, then that should be the end of it. And I don't see how it makes any difference one way or the other.
Russ, does the setback change alter your plan? Or
Well,
have-
if we had to move the building 12 foot further from
Right.
Pages, now, if you read the
I think
notes.
that you answered the question.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
but I will say that we actually were requested by the design review committee to move the building as close to Pages Lane as we possibly could, and made some pretty significant modifications to layout to actually slide the building as close to Pages Lane, because they wanted to open up as much site and they wanted to allow us to set that back from the road a little bit. So, so yes, it does have implications, obviously, for us to make it.
So Russ, you're saying that the design committee asked you to do something that was at odds with what Janice said?
I'm sure they had no knowledge of Janice's comments.
Yeah, Janice's comment came after we had gone through design review, but as I said, we have had multiple staff meetings. We've been working on this for years, and it never came up that there was a concern. And again, I don't understand her you know, as I said, there's been a consistent logic to the way that this has been done. And I was just sort of taken aback by her taking this stance at this stage.
Russ, I have a question. It's Bill here. Are both parcels owned by the same, the applicant?
Both are owned by the applicant, and so is the one across the street.
So could they not, I mean, I don't know if George can weigh in on this. Couldn't they just do a lot line revision, you know, slide that line over to meet the other line and then have there be no separate parcel? Or, I mean, it's pretty much just a simple task sometimes. I don't know in this case if it is, I don't know where, but.
Well, it's the concern is associated with the rights to pass and repass of all these separate parcels. There's a lot going on between the three parcels as far as access to the yacht club and the other holders, and we will have to deal with it. We have to actually provide the easement for public access over that land. So we are going to have to clean it up. The issue is we don't want us having to clean this all up. We have the whole construction period for us to figure out, get the easement for this. We don't want it linked to our approval here. And we are concerned that it might tie our hands in some fashion associated with some of the ways that the different parcels have access associated with them.
Okay.
Russ,
Richard, you have a question?
Russ, hi, Russ, how you doing?
Good, Richard.
Quick question on that. I should know the answer to this, but I don't think I do. That portion of Page's Lane, that's private road, correct? That's not town. That's not a town road.
It is not a town road. No.
Yeah. So
I'm pretty sure it's Page's on the other side of the street.
I know by the train station.
And this side, I believe, is not. Yeah, it's privately owned.
You know, and I don't believe, and I remember I was part of the 2015 approval when McClellan came up with housing for the site. And you're right, this did not come up then. This is almost like an arbitrary boundary, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've noted your concerns on Janice's memo, and we'll discuss it a little later. We got some more stuff to get through, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Scott, you want to grab Kevin McGee's memo? Oh, Scott went MIA. How about you, Jamie?
Sure, no problem. Dated January 4th, 2022 to the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission from Kevin McGee, Environmental Planner, regarding coastal site plan, special permit of Eagle View Homes LLC, 405 Whitfield Street, Guilford, Connecticut, 06437, Assessor Map 28, Lot 5. Eagle View Homes LLC proposes to construct a 3-building multifamily residential development with drive-under parking. The applicant has completed the checklist to guide low-impact development best management practices and is utilizing several of the recommended practices. The stormwater management system is designed to reduce peak rate reduction, promote infiltration, and groundwater recharge by the utilization of grass drainage channels and vegetated filter strips, stone underground infiltration basin, and catch basins that discharge into a hydrodynamic separator. The plans for the project have sedimentation and erosion control procedures that are in compliance with 273-97B subsection 6 of the zoning regulations. The coastal resource policy is applicable for. Are you laughing at my son? I'm sorry.
I am.
I'm sorry. Let's start again. The coastal resource policies applicable for the property are general coastal resources, coastal hazard area, tidal wetlands, and water dependent uses. To meet consistency with the Coastal Area Management Act for constructing a non-water dependent use at a waterfront site, the applicant is proposing to construct a boardwalk to a viewing platform overlooking the salt marsh in the West River. As a requirement of the low impact development checklist that the applicant submits, a requirement of the low impact development checklist that the applicant submits a request for natural diversity database review from the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. The review conducted by DEEP noted 2 species of state special concerns, salt marsh sparrow and the northern diamondback terrapin, which were located in the vicinity of the project site along with the nearby bald eagle nest. The salt marsh sparrows breed in the adjacent tidal marsh and use the marsh margins, including areas of bare ground interspersed with taller vegetation for foraging and cover from predators. The northern diamondback terrapin inhabits salt marshes and tidal estuaries and utilizes adjacent sandy dry uplands areas for nesting. The Connecticut DEEP NDDB determination letter dated February 22nd, 2021 recommended several protection strategies for the 2 species of concern and the bald eagle. Inspections of the property for litter, monitoring the dumpster and outside storage areas. I'm sorry, did I miss a page here? That transition seems
No,
strange.
you're good.
That's it? Okay. But there's no A.
Oh, sorry. So do you not have a litter monitoring the dumpster and outside storage areas, monitoring of catch basins, oil particle testers?
I have that. It just seems strange. There's no A. There's a first page and then the second, like there's no letter A. Does anybody else see
No.
that?
Okay.
It feels like there should be 3 pages, not 2.
Yeah, I only have 2 pages here. I'm sorry, Phil.
Okay. Well.
Anybody else have the?
Lisa, do we have a 3rd page on this somewhere?
I only got the 2.
Just 2.
I can post it here
Yeah.
if you'd like.
You have
That
a
would be-
3rd
thank you,
page?
Russ.
Is there a 3rd page?
When
Or
you
second
gave-
page? I think it's
I
the
think it's
second page
the
that we're
pages.
missing.
So
There we go. That looks more like it. Okay,
right.
thank
so-
you,
Oh,
Russ.
wait a minute, there's quite a bit there.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, there's a whole, there's 7 sections. So scroll up,
If
Russ.
you could scroll up,
Yeah.
Russ, that'd be great.
Keep going.
There you go.
There.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I recommend the following conditions of approval in order to make that the coastal resources are protected. Number 1, prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance, the public access area be constructed and marked with approved public access signage, and the coastal access easement and maintenance agreement be conveyed to the town of Guilford. Number 2, stormwater outlet number 2 is partially being installed close to the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection jurisdiction, and any work within the area would require a permit from that agency. Stormwater outlet number 2 should be pulled back further inland so that no work falls inadvertently in the Connecticut DEEP jurisdiction, and this larger distance could provide additional treatment. Number 3, a licensed engineer shall oversee the installation of the stormwater management system. The licensed engineer shall provide a final report to the zoning enforcement officer. Number 4, the town of Guilford zoning enforcement officer shall be notified to inspect the sedimentation and erosion control measures prior to any site work. Soil stockpiles should be contained by silt fencing and or hay bales. Soil erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained until vegetation is established or suitable material is installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. Number 5, an independent soil and erosion control expert shall be retained to monitor soil and erosion controls on site and conduct inspections at least once a week and within 24 hours of the end of a storm with a rainfall amount of 1 inch or greater, and shall submit a report to the zoning enforcement officer after each inspection, but not less than once a week. Number 6, the developer shall enter into an agreement with the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission to place a cash bond, which will be held in a savings account held by the town of Guilford in the amount established by the zoning enforcement officer. The bond will be held by the town of Guilford in a savings account for the period of 1 year or 1 growing season to ensure that all soil erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be maintained in the manner in which they were approved on the site plan, are in compliance for a period of 1 year or 1 growing season after completion of the project, and that vegetation is established to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer prior to removal of such soil erosion and sedimentation control measures. Number 7, to assure future compliance of the stormwater management system in accordance to section 273-75F of the zoning code. A written maintenance and operation manual for all the stormwater management systems located at the subject site. The manual should provide provisions for yearly inspection maintenance of the stormwater system and yearly reports to the town engineer. The maintenance schedule should include, but not be limited to, weekly, monthly, and quarterly inspections of the property for litter, monitoring the dumpster and outside storage areas, monitoring of the catch basins, oil-particle separator, underground stormwater system, the removal of accumulated material and non-native invasive species in the swales, and energy dissipator. The maintenance plan needs to provide a statement that the stormwater management plan will be reviewed annually so that inspections/maintenance requirements may be modified and that any changes to the plan would require the approval of the town engineer. B, an as-built drawing of the completed stormwater system prepared in accordance with section 273-75F stormwater management subsection 6, construction. C, the applicant shall file a maintenance covenant on the land records as required by section 273-75F stormwater management subsection 7, maintenance covenants of the town of Guilford zoning code. Number 8, any tree removal or tree planting being conducted within the right of way of Whitfield Street. Apologies. I know, sweetie. That's night. I forgot. Yes, night, sweetie. Thank you. Okay, good. Where are we? Apologies, y'all.
Yeah, come here.
Let's start with B. An as-built drawing of the completed stormwater system prepared in accordance with, I think I already read that, I'm sorry. Any tree removal or tree planting being conducted within the right of way of Whitfield Street will require a permit from the town tree warden. Number 9, site work should follow the recommendations in the Connecticut Deep NDDB review dated February 22nd, 2021 regarding work restrictions with the state species of concern and the bald eagle nest. To protect the nesting eagles, construction shall not occur between February 1 and April 21st. Thank you.
No, I nothing against Kevin, but that looked like a classic cut and paste.
Wow.
I mean, it just.
I think the weekly maintenance schedule thing's a little onerous.
Oh,
in my
yeah,
experience.
it just goes on and on and on.
I don't have a vote, but that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Russ, what are your comments on that?
I think we can accommodate most of what is in here. I mean, yes, there's a lot of oversight. I mean, we've installed systems that are actually right out of their, this should be a poster child really for what they're looking for us to do with low impact development. I don't think there's been a project that has utilized such low impact development standards as this. And one of the reasons for that is that it's also lower maintenance. It doesn't take as much yearly maintenance in order to maintain these systems. I think that, Guilford has a 25-foot critical coastal resource setback that we will maintain for the habitat that is there. It's not in great shape from the previous owner, and we will restore it. That's part of our proposal on our landscape. So, I mean, in general, I mean, we can accommodate, obviously, but it does feel as though we're not being rewarded for our efforts and investment that we've made. And I'll state that it really feels that we're trying to do our best. We're trying to propose something that is going to be a benefit for the town, taking a site that's industrial and underutilized to something that's really going to gain a huge amount of tax revenue and in perpetuity be, I think, a better fit for the neighborhood. And then being handpicked really with additional layer after layer of requirement because they can. So I don't know how to
Russ.
react to that, but,
Yeah,
but
I have a question about the management. I think you're using level spreaders most everywhere, right?
yes, we are.
So in my experience, in the past experience, that is the absolute, creme de la creme of ways of cleaning water and having no maintenance issues.
yeah.
So,
I've got a question though. We've encountered this before with other development projects, which has to do with inspection of wastewater, not wastewater, but water management, catch basins. Kevin was very specific in terms of inspections for that. And there are not really many mechanisms in town for those inspections to take place. So, Russ, my question for you is, those conditions, I mean, whose responsibility is it to inspect the water?
Well, if these units are all sold off, and it will become responsibility and written into the bylaws of the condo association that they will need to hire someone on a yearly basis to submit this report, and that will fall on the new owners of the condo complex, obviously, because the developers, once they sell off, I think half or some percentage, have to pass ownership over to the condo association. So that will be, as we discussed earlier, have to be written into the bylaws, and it will be a yearly expense that falls on the condo association HOA fee.
Which will be captured in their annual fees to the association.
Yes, and I would guess it would have to be an engineer. You'd have to hire a local engineer.
Right.
I knew,
Right.
Stormwater, obviously, septic systems, we have a very simple septic system, so they aren't requiring that, but the more complex, like a xenon systems and such that you've seen, those have a higher level of inspection. But stormwater, it does require some maintenance. You do have to, make sure that they're operating properly, but I'm not sure it needs yearly maintenance, especially with the systems that we're proposing here.
could you have Seamus bring up, this is Bill again,
Yeah.
bring up the water management just to refresh everybody on how it operates?
Sure. Seamus, do you mind doing that?
Of course. Do you want me to share the screen? I can show you the mechanisms that we've put in place.
Yeah, I think there were 3 or 4. I remember 3 distinct areas, but maybe there was a 4th.
That's correct. So can everybody, as long as everybody can see my screen. So what we have here on the front of the site is a grass drainage channel. So all the runoff from the front of the site will enter this shallow swale. Will discharge around. It had some 300 feet of length in order to treat for water quality, for water volume. It slows the runoff, so it'll discharge into a swale along the front, then down a shallow swale along the property line. Between the 2 properties, there's a little gully before discharging to the wetland. So the whole length of the front is just about 600 feet or so. In the back of the property, everything that's being collected, or all the runoff that's being generated from the back of the property on the parking lot in the parking area, is sheet flowing down the parking lot to a level spreader, as you pointed out, to a vegetated filter strip that is more than 50 feet. So the 50 feet is what the water quality manual recommends for the length. This is, I believe, almost 100 feet. So it adds extra treatment to it. There is a berm at the bottom of that vegetated filter strip to allow pooling up to 1 foot of depth of water, to allow some water to infiltrate before it spills over that spillway. And then there's another 30 feet or so before the wetland for that storm event beyond that. Third practice is a stone infiltration basin below building A here. And this is for the clean roof runoff. So all the roof runoff from the 3 buildings, as you can see, this piping network here will discharge into this underground storm, the stone bed for it to infiltrate. For the larger storms, we do have an underdrain pipe that'll collect those larger storm events into an outlet control structure, and that'll discharge in this location here to a level spreader. And lastly, the 4th one is the runoff that is coming from off of our property and coming from Page's Lane and some of these lower areas that we can't sheet flow. We're capturing those in a catchment system to a hydrodynamic separator. to a level spreader, and then discharging sheet flow another 50 feet to the wetland. So those are the 4 stormwater treatment areas.
And Seamus, this is Sean. How do you ensure that the piping remains clear? Is there a cleaning system? I mean, do you have to hire someone to come in and?
So for hydrodynamic separators, for catch basins, those you want to have at least a 0.5% pitch on the pipe. It naturally cleans out the pipe as it goes. Obviously, if you get larger debris in there, it could potentially back it up. However, there's a maintenance plan, I believe it's on sheet 2, that those are supposed to be cleaned out once a year. So if there's any debris in those catch basins have a 2-foot sump in them. So the larger debris hopefully gets settled into the bottom of that sump before getting into the into the pipe system. So any of the debris will hopefully be collected in the bottom of those catch basins, and they'll be pumped out once a year, or vacuumed out once a year, I should say.
Thank you.
Hey, Russ, I have a quick question. The letter references the recommendations from the Connecticut DEP and DDP from February 22nd. And perhaps Steve McGuire can answer this better than anyone else. Is the new nest, which is farther away, new this year?
Yes, this fall they re-nested and moved, and is what I understand. And they haven't laid their eggs yet, but they seem to be habitating that new nest location.
Does that make sense, Stephen? You seem to be our local eagle expert.
Yeah, the nest was established in 2014 and has been. Can you hear me?
Yeah, the original nest was 2014.
Yeah, and it was. I was really mystified when I saw this squirrel's nest getting a lot bigger and not seeing the eagles who are carrying nesting material as they do every year to this new location. So I called my buddy at Sheephog Dam, who is a true eagle expert. And his first question was, have you seen a lot of owl activity lately? And that's where that rumor started from, was from Brian at Sheephog Dam, who is truly an expert. So that's the most likely reason why they moved to the new site. Of course, my question to you is, there's no reason why the eagles might, for some other reason, move away from this nest. Do you have a renaming policy for eagle view if there is no eagles to view? But I've asked a number of experts, and the reason why I'm not causing a fuss is if they could put up with all the destruction and sometimes intentional malicious noise making in the neighborhood from arrow paving, I don't think you guys can come even close. Does that answer your question?
Well, no, actually, I just wanted to clarify one question, that the new nest was built last fall. So
it has been built last fall. Right. The egg laying is usually in mid-February. This nest has been running a little bit later. I believe the 22nd was the.
So I guess my question is, the comments from the deep are based on the review dated from February of 2021. So it's not reflective of the new nest, if that makes any sense.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I did contact Brian Hess, who is the DEP guy, who kind of is not known for his long answers nor actually interest. Did I say that right?
I don't know. All right. So anything else you'd like to address in Kevin's letter, Russ?
I don't think so. I'll ask Seamus if he has anything other that he was concerned with.
No, I don't have any. But like Mr. Frieden pointed out, item number 5, I believe, for the weekly inspections, that did seem like a lot to me, but it's up to the committee. Usually bi-weekly or after a storm event, generating a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch is usually enough. But weekly inspections seemed excessive, but we'll do whatever the commission wants.
I think bi-weekly sounds fairly reasonable to me. But again, we'll leave it to the commission to kind of come to a conclusion on that. Scott, I did call on you before, but you did a Houdini on me, so you want to grab?
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. You want to grab the note from Sonia Marino so we can move on to the next item?
Yep, 1 second. This is to planning and zoning from Sonia Marino, December 8th, 2021, RE 405 Whitfield Street, map 28, lot 5. Subsurface sewage disposal system, SSDS review. The engineered plan designed by L'Oreal Engineering and Associates for the above reference project, last revised 10.19.2021 has been approved. Please note that the project is under 7,500 GPD collectively, therefore CTDEP approval is not required. In addition, each building is under 2,000 GPD, so the CTDPH environmental engineering program approval is also not required. The plan had 100% compliant SSDS systems designed with 100% compliant reserve areas for each building. If any other revisions are needed to the site plan for the health department, will need to be notified, and the approval will be adjusted to reflect the new revision date. The health department has to give the licensed septic installer the most current approved plan at the time that the permit to construct is issued.
Okay with that one, Russ? That one's pretty easy, I think. Sorry, muted.
Yes, we're in agreement with that. That's great.
Great. George, do we need to read in the federal emergency management? I think this was the, what was the name of Laura?
The Lomar determination. No, you don't have to do that.
Okay, well, if anyone's interested, there is a federal emergency management letter for the flood determination. We're good with that. There is a note from Derek Goss. Let's see, who haven't we had? Sean, do you want to grab the one from the Connecticut Energy and Environmental Protection?
I'm looking for it. Oh, yeah. The one dated February 22nd?
Yes.
Expires,
What's that?
expires on February 22nd.
Expiration, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so this from Derek Goss, Waldo and Associates LLC, 89 Water Street, 89 State Street, Guilford, Connecticut. Dated February 22nd, 2021. NDDB determination number 202101675. Project spread fill to elevate site for redevelopment as a multifamily housing unit, 405 Whitfield Street, Guilford, Connecticut. Expiration February 22nd, 2023. I've reviewed National Diversity Database maps and files regarding this project. According to our records, there are state listed RCSA section 26-306 documented in close proximity and could be affected by activities in proposed project area. There's not a number or a letter, but it says salt marsh sparrow. I'm not going to try to pronounce the species. State special concern. A tidal marsh specialist breeds in Connecticut tidal marsh habitat from mid-May through early August. Connecticut possesses a globally significant proportion of the breeding population of these species. Connecticut populations have experienced a significant decline in nesting successes due to increased rates of nest flooding. It is important to note that although salt marsh sparrow nest in the middle of marshes, once fledged, they females?
Yeah, probably the
females and young preferentially use marsh margins, including areas of bare ground interspersed with taller vegetation for foraging, cover from predation, and reduced flooding risk. This behavior makes it important to delineate proper long-term protection buffers at the edges of their nesting habitat. Northern Diamondback Terrapin. Again, I'm going to avoid the
Latin.
state special concern. Northern Diamondbacked Terrapin is a turtle that inhabits salt marshes and salt or brackish tidal waters. They can be found on mudflats, shallow bays, coves, and tidal estuaries. Adjacent sandy, dry upland areas are required for nesting. Nesting takes place in June through July on salt marshes and adjacent beach areas. The peaks of hatching occurrences are April through June and September through November. These species overwinters in depressions in the bottoms of estuaries, creeks, and salt marshes, channels composed of muddy and fine-grained sediments. Protection measures to apply to your activity. Spreading fill to evaluate the site for the redevelopment. To protect nesting Northern Diamondback Terrapin, any construction, ground disturbance, or clearing activities that will occur near estuarine marsh on sandy habitat or within 100 meters of these habitats should be done during the turtle's inactive period, November 1st through March 31st. In the event that construction cannot be completed during the winter months when the work may be performed between April 1st and October 31st, in accordance with protection measures and best management practices below, daily inspections should be conducted during the construction period to monitor for any, help me out here, Meloclines. That's the Latin.
Another turtle.
Yeah, the
That's-
Diamondback, so
Yeah, that's all.
AKA the Diamondback turtle.
Yeah, right. All construction workers should be advised and educated about these turtles and protection strategies. Good luck with that. That is parenthetically. Silt fencing should be installed around the work area prior to commencement of construction and will be inspected daily. A visual inspection should be conducted once silt fencing is in place and prior to start of any work activity to locate any potential turtles. All work personnel will be notified to be alert for the potential presence of the turtles and will be provided with a description of the species. Any turtle that may be discovered will be carefully removed without harm. It sounds like something else I read. To a location outside the work area and positioned in the same orientation that had been moving. No turtles will be removed or relocated from the area. No vehicles or machinery should be parked in any identified turtle habitat. Take special care to avoid harm to basking or foraging individuals during any work conducted in the early morning and evening hours. Report any observations of these turtles to our deep NDDP program or deep NDDP request at ct.gov as soon as possible. For redevelopment site planning, work biologists during your redevelopment site planning to delineate conservation buffers or salt marsh habitat to protect state listed species. Applied best practices to protect ecological functions and water quality of wetland to preserve food sources for state listed species. Be aware that the presence of a nesting bald eagle may impact redevelopment work that will include the use of heavy equipment. Your project is nearby the 660 feet setback buffer. Work activities and staging areas are prohibited within 330 feet, approximately 100 meters, of active nest roosts that are out of line of sight or within 660 feet approximately 200 meters from nests roost that are in the line of sight during the periods of eagle use, unless surveys demonstrate that the nest or roost is not being used. Critical nesting time is between February 1st and August 1st. No blasting, pile driving, and other intermittent that produce loud noises within a half mile of active nests. This recommendation applies to the use of fireworks classified by the Federal Department of Transportation as Class B explosives, and includes the larger fireworks that are intended for licensed public display. Eagles scavenge. Do not leave exposed food, trash, or hazardous materials. Promptly remove of incidental carcasses that may appear on the worksite. Roadkill, euthanized or poisoned pests, or other animals. Okay, I think
The last is just template.
Yep, it is. It's all, it's cut and paste.
I would point out that, we take the recommendations of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection seriously, but they are just recommendations. We don't have to necessarily abide by them verbatim. Is that correct, George?
Yes, I think along with, I shouldn't say this, but since my time here is limited, I think I can say that these things are aspirational. And I think that also applies to some of the stormwater management maintenance provisions and recommendations, especially when
I'm volunteering to go down and monitor the turtles.
Right. And
all you got to do is ride around in your boat. They're popping up all over.
I know. I'll just do it.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. What else do we have left on this? We have Kevin's note to Brian, but he didn't really submit that. And again, I'll just read this one. This is a quick note back from Brian Hess. Hi, Kevin. With the distance in the wetland buffer and history on the eagles at this spot, I'm hopeful the eagles will not be disturbed by the activity. Be cautious. I would say that most sensitive period is between February 1 and April 21 or thereabouts. In this period, the pair formation, egg laying, incubation, and hatching will occur. Once the chicks are larger, the weather is warmer, and leaves have emerged, the threat of disturbance goes down considerably. I'm happy to talk more and address specific plans as necessary. Brian Hess, wildlife biologist. And again, I think the fact that this new nest is an additional 300 feet, Russ, you couldn't have planned that any better.
I will also point out with regards to the species, the condition of the site as it stands right now and how it has been. It has not been a habitat location. It's been asphalt for a long time. And we are planning to put in place, I think, what he's speaking of as good habitat in the future as part of this development. So I do think that's worth noting. We're not taking an unused parcel that's been used for many years as a habitat for the turtles or the sparrows. I think that, this is something that in a lot of ways will be improvement for all of these species mentioned compared to its historic use.
Just to reiterate on Russ's point, I'm just going to do a quick screen share. So this is dated from a few years ago, but you'll note, there was a lot of pretty intensive activity, including stockpiling of asphalt millings. So I think
we can't see your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
How about that? Better?
Yeah.
So this is kind of looking what would be toward the eagle's nest this way, but this is obviously all prior activity, nothing that's being done now. So I just, from a perspective standpoint.
So where did you get that? Is that from Google?
No, it's my drone.
Oh, your drone. Okay, right.
Snapped it. Yep.
I just heard something buzzing above my house.
That wasn't me.
Phil?
Yes.
One question to Russ, and I believe that this has been addressed because they're very responsible in what they're going through. Is there any remediation that has to be done to the site?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did have to remove the material that was stockpiled illegally on the site, and that's why you had seen some activity that happened down there where they trucked that off. That was at Janice's request because she felt that the fill that was placed on site, it wasn't because of hazardous material or remediation. It was just that she required us to remove that material from the site since it was illegally placed by the prior owner. No, and we actually, through her efforts, have really minimized. We were trying to raise the grades a lot higher in order to protect it more from flood. And she really pushed back on our filling of the site. So we're really not, bringing much land manipulation in. It's really following the existing grades pretty closely. So.
Because I just, when you went by there, and Steve will back me up, sometimes you would shake your head at what was there.
Oh, yeah.
And Phil, you must have driven by it a zillion times.
Yeah, the site has had a long history of, let's just say, getting better slowly. So hopefully we're getting better quickly now. So I will kick this back to commissioners to ask any questions, and then out to the public to ask any questions with respect to, is that fair, Russ? I don't believe we have any more memos.
We can close our presentation and start to move into questions. That'd be great.
Right. Any questions from commissioners with respect to this application?
Phil, this is Jamie. I have a brief question. Janice referenced something about, I believe, one of the septic system tanks and the location of it. And she was hoping that it would be placed outside of wave action. I don't remember, but did Sonia's email or memo address those concerns? Because it seemed like Sonia was happy with, was satisfied with the placement of things.
That was my take on Sonia's, memo didn't say anything about moving it, but that it was a compliant system, under the 7,500 gallons and under 2,000 per building. So I didn't note anything to that effect.
If you'd like me to chime in, this
Sure.
is Seamus Moran again. So we did have, Sonia did approve the septic system. Janice had a comment about relocating the tank. She also made a recent comment that we moved it closer, but we didn't touch it because we do have septic approval. The discussion we'll have to have with Sonia is whether or not we want to relocate the septic tank and pump chamber. Right now, it's below grade. There's a reason for the pump chamber. It's actually below, in the limbo, it's below the grades that would potentially wash away during a storm event like that. So there were no concerns with the health department and where the location of the septic tank or the pump chamber. So if we do have to revise that, we'll talk to Sonia. We'll have to revise the plans and revise her letter. But that's why I wanted to talk to Sonia about the septic placement and if there is any concerns on her end with that.
That answer your question, Jamie?
It does. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? I'm going to kick it out to the public then. Would anyone like to ask a question? So what we'll do is we'll take questions first. Like that. And again, if your camera's off, I can't see if you got your hand up. So if anyone would like to ask a question, and after questions, we'll go to comments both in favor and against the application. So does anyone have a question? Yes. Hi, Jan. If you could state your name and address for the record, that would be great.
Yes, I'm Jan Brissett, 95 Boston Street in Guilford. And Russ, I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit about the walkway across Whitfield Street's elevated.
No, that is just an at-grade crossing. It's just going to be a crosswalk that's being installed there at the end of Pages Lane that connects to the required public access sidewalk that we add during, to our property to access the lookout.
Oh, so that's at grade. Okay,
that's
I
at grade.
misunderstood.
Yeah, not an up and over.
I was thinking, I've got to ask about that. Okay, I misunderstood then. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Would anyone else like to ask a question of the applicant? Dave Hall. Yeah, hold on, let me unmute you. There you go, Dave. Oh, I think. One sec. Can't hear you yet.
How's that? That working?
That's better.
Okay, so David Hall, 456 Woodfield Street. I'm Phil's neighbor. So I do have a question about the lighting. I know that we talked a little bit about it last week, but you know, with the introduction of this LED lighting, it seems like the areas that are to be lit, the light grows far further than the property line and is a harsh glare. And I'm wondering if there's any plans to put lighting in the back of the building that might shine out in the marsh, which could affect habitat, or the fact that you've got parking in the front. I don't see any shrubs that might block car lighting from the adjacent property owners. Just a thought, you know, I'm sure you've thought of it.
We do have a photometric plan that was submitted as part of our application, and which I can put up on the screen and share here. The way that this works is there's several types of lighting. There's sort of low scale post lighting, that's the red dots, and then low bollards that are only about 3 feet tall, that are green dots. And then this is very small, but if you zoom in, it actually has the actual lumens that are actually on the surface. And so we have to show that we're not having any light pollution off of our site. It has to go to 0 before it hits anything off of our site. And so, you know, this is a very scientific review of how the lighting is being designed and meeting the minimum standards for safety, but as well not having any light pollution. And then Janice did ask for some additional information associated with some of the light cuts that were on the building, because traditionally they would have a light bulb that would be visible that might have glare, but we're using actually LEDs that have the light hidden up in the can. So they look traditional, but they're recessed in a way that has what's called a full cutoff, so that there's no more than a 90-degree cutoff, so no upward light, and really we're aiming to keep it all on the site. So I think that this overall lighting will be very much in keeping with the residential neighborhood and the light levels that you're used to. And there's no plans for spots or floods or anything that would have harm into the marsh. As far as the headlights, we don't have hedges or other sort of plantings with the front parking areas as it stands now. I mean, it's something we could look into, but I think Design Review and others kind of wanted it sort of very casual and not formal with these formal blockages and such. They kind of wanted it more loose and more landscape like you have on the rest of the street with residential. So we haven't set up to have, you know, definitive markings at the end of those. We don't think those guest parking are going to be used that much. All of the daily use parking is behind the building. There's 4 spots per unit with 2 inside, 2 outside. So it really is only when guests are coming that those front spots will be used. So again, I think it will be very residential in scale and not be, you know, a big concern.
Okay, well, thank you for answering my question. I just, you know, I know that it's more and more of these spotlights seem to be out there now.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Steve McGuire, if you can state your name and address for the record, please. How about we unmute you?
Yes, thank you. Stephen McGuire, 342 Old Whitfield Street. I'm still not quite understanding what happens with the, you know, the septic and the runoff water during our next tropical storm. I mean, is it all contained, and it will be contained for like 3 or 4 days after a tropical storm? How do you deal with that since you're at such a low grade?
This is Seamus Moran again. So for low grades like this along coastlines, you don't correlate a coastal storm with an upland flooding event. So coastal events, you can't design your stormwater systems based on a coastal event. You design them based on the flooding event, an upland flooding event. So that's the treatment that we're providing is for runoff, not from a tidal surge or something like that coming into the property. You design it for, the district, for the discharge, you design a tailwater based on the coastal jurisdiction line. It's not, you know, the 100-year storm event or anything like that. That everything along the coastline will just be submerged at that point for a 100-year storm event. Again, we were going to raise the grade, so everything was outside the flood zone. However, that was refuted. So our stormwater design is based on stormwater runoff generated from our site, not from a coastal surge. And that's consistent with the Connecticut DOT. You can't design for your system for a tidal surge like that.
But we're having these storms, like for the last week, we've been at flood stage around the moon cycle, much higher than normal. So I guess maybe you don't understand my question. What happens to the water? Do you have a working septic system after one of these more and more recent storms?
Yes, I'm sorry. So I was answering the stormwater for the septic. Yes, there's a minimum 24-inch separating distance above the observed high groundwater elevation. So we have soil testing, about 30 test pits across the site to develop what that average high groundwater elevation is. That's the high groundwater elevation of the site. And then we have a separating distance above that. And on top of that, we're actually providing more than the 24 inches required. I believe we're just about 30 inches of separating distance to the bottom of our system. So even below, from the bottom of our system to that high groundwater elevation, we have plenty of separation distance.
But you're not addressing the more and more recent tropical storms.
I think what he's saying, Steve, and I understand what you're saying, have you designed the system for a tropical storm? And the answer is no, they've designed it based on rainfall and the runoff, not based on storm surge and storm flooding, which it does not sound like they're required to do so. Is that adequate, Seamus?
That's correct.
Are they in a high velocity zone?
No, so there is a V zone, but none of our improvements are in the V zone. There is the Limwa, which is the area where there's waves between 1.5 and 3 feet. There's a portion of the site in the Limwa. So what we have to do is design below that elevation. That was a lot of work that we had with Janice to get to that point. And then the other majority of the site now, based on the LOMR that we had approved, that's effective December 17th, that's all in the outside the Limwa, outside the velocity zone.
Yeah, so Steve, what we have to deal with is the regulations we have, and the reality of the next 100-year storm, which could be next year or 20 years from now, or
or next week.
I will also say, Steve, that the systems, the tanks are tight tanks. They're designed with ballast. They won't lift out of the ground. They won't be inundated. And these systems are actually meant to actually be able to wait out the period of time when there is a storm event until it then goes back out. Correct me if I'm wrong, Seamus, but basically, we're putting in all best practice in this. It's going to be much better than a system 10 years old or 20 years old on all the residences, that are in that area. And there are measures to allow a system to still be able to bridge a period of time where it might be inundated and then return to use afterwards. And so that's part of our approach to this, and dealing with more frequent storms. They're resilient in the way that they're designed that way.
What you're saying is that you're building something that is better than almost anything that is within probably half a mile of this site.
Well, I can't say that necessarily, because there's elevation changes and other differences, but we're using best practice, and our interest is to have this as resilient as we can. We really would like it to be more resilient if we could, but there's real constraints that we found within the Guilford flood ordinance that go beyond the federal FEMA recommendations that restrained us from actually being able to make this the location and heights of the buildings more resilient.
And just to be clear, were those restraints relative to elevation?
They were relative to the placement of fill on the property. That is the FEMA federal guidelines allow for certain amounts of fill to be added in areas to elevate properties and bring them out of floodplain use. But the Guilford ordinance went beyond and said that no fill could be placed within a LIMWA zone. And so even, small amounts for driveways and walkways and such weren't allowed. So we found, after multiple attempts to try and find a solution that would allow us to raise the graves 2 feet on the site and bring it more out of harm's way, all the systems out of harm's way, including the buildings, we just couldn't find a path that was allowed through the engineer's interpretation of the Guilford flood ordinance. And so that's where we're at now. The buildings are very resilient, as I said, in the way that they're done. All the living space is going to minimize the impact of damage. It's just the garage levels that are that might see flooding during these events, but they're designed with floodproof materials and with flood vents and such as is required.
And my main concern is the stormwater and septic containment during like a major storm, as we know, comes more and more frequent. So I guess you said you were complying as far as you can above to the letter of the law, maybe a little above the letter of the law, but perhaps the law is not quite in tune with what is going to be happening in the next 10 years.
I think actually what Russ stated is that the systems are designed to have a capacity that even if inundated would still be functional and not be releasing materials. So I hope that, obviously we're not going to be able to 100% address all of your concerns, but I think Russ's answer was pretty good on that.
I'm just not comfortable with the amount of, basically, beautiful building. Russell, you and your company always do beautiful work, but I think it's out of scale with the physical realities of the site. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question? Yes, Joe Nugent, would you please state your name and address for the record, please? Oh, hold on, Joe. Hold on.
Are we live?
You're live.
All right, Joe Nugent, 98 Cedar Hill Road, formerly a 43-year resident south of the tracks. One comment, I think that the project or the plan should make 2 parking spaces available by the viewing platform, because you're not going to be able to park on Whitfield Street and walk down Yacht Club Road to use that viewing platform. And I don't think the Yacht Club would be happy if you parked along Yacht Club Road either. The property, the storage buildings to the east, has 1 parking space allowed for access to the wetlands. And I think it'd be a good idea to allocate 2 parking spaces by the viewing platform. And my second comment, probably to George Crawl, once this project is approved, is it going to guarantee public access to the 40 acres of land that the town of Guilford owns off of Yacht Club Road? That has been an issue for the past 40 years.
I can't answer your question. This is something that we've been negotiating and not litigating yet, but negotiating and exploring for the last 6 months or more, pursuant to, or precipitated partly by this project. And I can't really answer your question definitively, but I think that's a strong likelihood that the town's going to be able to establish clear authorities to access its own property.
Well, I don't want to see the can being kicked down the road any further. I think it should be resolved. And the best way to do it is resolve it before this project is approved. That's my opinion.
Joe, if I can speak to that a little. So this project doesn't have full control over all aspects of that access. And so there's multiple parties involved in that negotiation outside of our control as our applicant. And so I think that is why it hasn't. I think our interests, are to clear up all the discrepancies and concerns associated with that. But unfortunately, it makes it a little bit more challenging when there's multiple parties outside of our control. So As far as the viewing, the way that we had been approached by Kevin, it hadn't been brought up to have parking access on that. So we have not accommodated for parking. It is something I guess we could entertain, although, as I said, it is very tight. We just don't have much room with the way that the setbacks and the requirements of the FEMA and other things are in that area of the site. So we'd have to take a look and see whether that was something that we could accommodate. But it's not easy.
Russell, are you a birder?
I am not an active birder, no.
Okay, let me put it to you this way. Birders are such that if something is spotted down there of interest, it goes out on the web, and literally the birders will, excuse the pun, flock there. And you will have more than one car outside on that road. If someone says, hey, the eagle's hatched, there's a chick, you could see the chick now. So you're going to have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people on one given day down there to look at that nest.
I do understand that, but we've been asked for a 10-foot wide easement access for a public walkway, to the property. So, that's what we've accommodated in our design to date. And this is the first that we're hearing of something larger that would accommodate car access and vehicular access onto our site. It is something that we can discuss and entertain, but it isn't going to be that easy for us to accommodate it, given all.
I want to resolve a conflict between a birder and a property owner. That's all. Because if someone drives down there and they don't own the property and they park their car, the property owner is like, hey, what are you doing here? You can't park here. That's all.
I would also note that there's usually ample parking at the train station, which is a very short walk if someone was so inclined.
Right. Let me also add, and Joe knows this, the town is very much interested in developing the property that we own for passive use, the property that's downstream, if you will, of the Eagle's Nest now. Actually, the Eagle's Nest is probably on that town-owned property, the new Eagle's Nest. And the town has talked about from time to time developing its property down there into a passive recreation facility, which would provide parking for people who wanted to use that area for a variety of purposes, including bird watching. So I think it's in the interest of the people of the town to promote that development, if you want to call it that. And that would also help resolve the access. The town owns a substantial piece of land there. We will always claim, I think, that we have access to use it, and facilitating better access through the provision of some limited parking is a good idea.
I agree with you, George. For those not familiar with it, there's 40 acres down there that the town owns, 14 acres of which are high and dry. So that's where the passive recreation area would be set up.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to ask a question of the applicant? And then we'll move to comments in favor and against. Great. Would anyone like to speak in favor of this application? Ellen, welcome. State your name and address for the record, please.
Ellen Ebert at 434 Whitfield Street, just down the street from this. I'm the also the acting chair of the Whitfield South Neighborhood Association, which is a rather low-key group, except when somebody decides they want to grind asphalt in the middle of our neighborhood. And I just wanted to be sure that people, that you, the committee, keep the perspective that what we've come from, this was a horrible, ugly, noisy industrial site. And if Arrow Paving left, another possibly worse kind of industrial enterprise could arrive there. We had, these big trucks racing each other down the street every day at 5 o'clock. Yeah. Stop work. So, I mean, this kind of development is like the dream of the Town Center South Committee. And I just hope you don't pick at them so much that this is so much better than anything we've ever had. And and including for the wildlife. And the only other thing that I would say is that I don't know if it's just too far gone now, but it certainly would be wonderful if there were the viewing platform is wonderful, but a whole walking loop. The Matabesic Trail people, the Shoreline Greenway Trail, the Guilford Preservation Alliance for years have tried to make some kind of a pathway. And anyway, I understand all the concerns, but it's also easy to get around them. You can walk along the edge of the road and cross it where the island is. And the sight lines aren't very good where it curves right there. So it's not, even that crosswalk is not a particularly safe crossing, and a little ways up isn't any different. So I don't know, is it too late to hope for a real walking path the whole way, looping around behind it? Philip, is it?
Probably.
Is it?
I think, when we impose public access upon private development, there's kind of a limit to what we can probably press for. I think in a lot of the projects that we've seen, I haven't seen anything like this. To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe there's any public access at all at 66 High. So I think this is a pretty fair, in my opinion, a pretty fair accommodation. To provide
It's very,
at least,
more than I hoped,
yeah.
but you can always hope.
I hear you. I mean, if you don't ask, you don't get. But I just didn't want to create any false sense of expectations that the committee would probably try and hold that up as the linchpin on this one. But
Anyway, I'm not speaking for the neighborhood association, just myself, but ourselves, but it will be a wonderful improvement.
thank you. Would anyone else, assuming you're done, Ellen, would anyone else like to speak in favor of this application? Yes, Eliza, is it Eliza? Sorry, I've got to unmute you. Gotcha.
It's Lisa Foley.
Sorry.
That's okay. I live across the street, I think, from you guys, for sure. I'm at 423 Whitfield Street, Joe's old house. And I want to speak in favor. I think, Russ, you and your team have done more than I ever really could have anticipated and imagined. I looked at this with trepidation, thinking, oh God, because I'm very close to the site. I'm actually into the marsh and practically feel like, to Steve's point, I've lived on a houseboat the last few days with this surge. But I think we can't ask for a more sensitive and reasonable plan than you've put forth. I'm looking forward to the improvement in the neighborhood that I think your development is going to bring. My only real concern is, the stormwater management and the consideration to the adjoining properties, because my house really is down and back and living in the marsh, and kind of where the pipes were, you were showing where the water was going to. I'm thinking, well, I'm sort of at the end of that water. So, as long as we don't see an appreciable increase in the water, I'm all for it. And I think it's a great plan, and we do appreciate all of your efforts. And I agree with Ellen. I think, I want to make sure that this goes through, because I think it's the best, certainly the best option that we could have anticipated and expected. So thank you. And thank the committee and the board for working it through, because I've been really impressed with listening to all of you and all the consideration.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thanks. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of this application?
Yeah,
Joe?
I'll speak in favor. It's a major improvement from what was there. And I hope my former neighbors realize what's going to happen is it's going to drive up the increased value of your property. So be prepared, because once this goes up, it'll be a much desirable place to live.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak in favor of this application? Would anyone like to speak against this application? Again, if your video's off, I can't see you, so I can't recognize you. Okay, then, with no comments additionally in favor or against, would someone like to make a motion to close?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
We'll call the vote. I get my little vote sheet out. Sean Cosgrove,
Aye.
Frank DeAndrea,
Aye.
Jamie Stein,
Yes.
Alan Brown. We got Alan still here? Give me a thumbs up, Alan. There you go. Thanks, bud. Richard Wallace,
Yes.
Scott Edmund.
Yes.
I'll also vote to close. Very good. Thank you very much, Russ and Seamus, and thank you also to the public for all of your input. As this is the only item on our agenda, would someone like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll do.
Please.
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a site plan, special permit and coastal site plan application for the Eagle View Homes LLC for a residential development at 405 Whitfield Street, map 28, lot 5, as shown on the following. Eagle View Homes, 15 sheets prepared by CK Architects dated October 19th, 2021, revised on 12/29/2021. Special permit, site plan, and coastal site plan applications for the multifamily residential development dated October 19th, 2021, 11 sheets prepared by Luero Engineering Associates. The application is approved with the following conditions, basically those by the issued by the environmental planner. This application is approved and based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code and is consistent with coastal management policies of the state of Connecticut. Special permit is effective on January 14th, 2022, and upon filing with the town clerk.
Thank you. That the motion, would someone like to second that? Then we can have discussion and potential modification.
Second.
Thank you. So discussion. I feel a little bit handcuffed because I only have 2 pages of Kevin's 3. But I would note that because of the change in the Eagle's Nest from the old location to the new location, that number 9, where Kevin, to protect nesting eagles, construction should not occur between February 1 and April 21. I think given that it's outside of the 660-foot barrier, I'd be comfortable eliminating at least that one, unless you want to change it to outdoor construction or something of that nature. Thoughts?
I'm pretty much in agreement with you. As Steve said, it's more of a low impact than whatever Aero Paving was doing there for the last few years. And they were doing it 360.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, Phil, just 1 second. This is Jamie. How long has that site been just not really functioning, just vacant? How long have they not been in operation?
well, I think Aero probably has been out of there for 18 months.
Yeah, I think you're about right.
But
yeah, and you know, Jamie, the Eagle's Nest was there while Aero Paving was still active.
Yeah.
And
thanks.
closer.
Yeah. I mean, there was another state species of concern, the salt marsh sparrows, but I was a little uncertain what the time frame sort of their critical time frame for whether it be nesting or foraging. So I guess I'm inclined to agree with you, Phil, that if the nest has moved, the only kind of definitive dates that I got from all that material was really, I guess, from Brian Hess about February through April. So
right, and I think the note from the DEP is kind of advisory, and what we would want to encourage is the applicant to be as sensitive as possible to the requests of the DEP, including, again, from everything that I see, the site's going to be improving what's potentially available there for the wildlife.
I would just add that the environmental concerns notwithstanding, this is much more consistent with any other use of that property with our town center south vision for the town.
Also in terms of protecting, I believe again, we don't have it up in front of us, but one of Kevin McGee's stipulations was to do the silt fencing and the hay bales that he typically does on all these jobs to protect natural resources. And I think that was also doubled down again when during CT Deep's letter as well. So I think that one comment from Kevin will certainly help with a lot of the protection of the natural resources around the site.
I would like to try to get the inspection part limited to maybe 12 times a year. That seems plenty of reports on the site. I mean, it seems once a month. I mean, we meet twice a month, and it seems like it shows up quicker than in a week. It's not 2 weeks. So I think once every 4 weeks to have somebody come out there and inspect the site and write a report is sufficient for the betterment of the site.
I'm fine with that, but I will kick it back to the commissioners to get your input on that.
Yeah, I tend to agree that you want to have some amount, because you certainly want to make sure it's known that, our expectation is that these things will be maintained. I think we've discussed it on multiple times, but it's a balancing act of wanting to be a reasonable request as well, at risk of people not following it at all. So, that seems to make sense to me, once a month. Again, you're putting the onus on the association.
I'm with Bill. I mean, you can blink an eye and it's time to inspect again. And with Sean, you're right, Scott, we're walking a line, and yeah, let's just do it monthly, 4 weeks versus 2 weeks.
I believe the original was weekly, so I think doing it on a monthly basis is a reasonable accommodation.
And if something's wrong with it, they're going to notice it.
Someone's gonna, that's the way the system works. I mean, if something's going wrong, someone's gonna make a complaint. And so it's in everybody's best interest.
Typically the concern is invasive species, right? Like clogging up these systems.
You're talking about that.
Fairly obvious when that happens. Correct. That's typically what we find, right? So, that's going to be fairly obvious when it happens.
And the onus will be on the HOA. And if they consistently are assessing each door so much because of problems, they're going to address it.
And no
I
one's
also
more
want to
interested in
comment on
maintaining
Janice's, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Bill. No one's more interested in maintaining the viability of the landscape that they're living in than the people who are there. These things are very self-enforcing. Again, I can speak to that as a condominium resident in the last few years. The residents are the ones that are going to be ensuring that these systems are maintained and the invasive species are discouraged and the geese are driven away, et cetera, et cetera.
With respect to Janice's memo, I am not in favor of the development parcel, the 12-foot strip. I think that's a battle for another day. And I think, having approved a similar application without that condition, in my opinion, we don't need to impose that.
And I agree with you 100%.
Agreed. I agree.
And when you approve this application, if you do approve it, you make a finding that it conforms to the zoning code. So that's really all you need to do with respect to that particular recommendation.
Thanks, George.
And then the other one had to do with the dumpsters. As George commented, the system seems to work pretty well at Allwood. And obviously, if it's not going to be working well, the association is going to have to find another way to get it accomplished.
I agree.
I agree too. I just think the association, is going to have some sway here, and they're going to have to come to some agreement. I mean, if someone's not in compliance with their rules, they're going to.
I mean, I hate to say it. Also, you're more likely to get raccoons and the like into dumpsters than into garbage cans inside garages. So you're going to have more debris about.
I live in North Guilford. I don't produce that much garbage. Thank you very much. But it's all outside. I've got recycling and garbage, and it's outside, and I have not had any problems. So, no one should get up in arms about, that kind of thing. I think the accumulation, I mean, if you concentrate, garbage in one place, you're more likely to attract animals.
And also, was there a question?
Garbage from 12 different dwellings in one place.
And it's kind of impossible to identify who's dumping stuff in the dumpster that shouldn't be.
Well, yeah. Well, who knows what's in whose garbage? I mean, and who cares?
All right.
And then another thing Janice brought up was the moving the tank thing that hadn't actually been moved. I think that really is under the purview of the health department.
Yeah.
Phil, excuse me, because you're correct. I did have to step out for a second. And I don't know if it was discussed with Kevin's stipulations, but one of them, I believe, I can't remember if it was number 5, mentioned a special bond. Did we discuss that at all?
That's
I think that's a standard.
That was relative to the vegetation, I think.
Correct.
The soil and erosion control.
I just figured I'd bring it up because I don't remember necessarily stipulating that before. So, but if that's the case, then fine.
It's usually
I
standard.
think that's fairly typical.
Okay.
I think in
other
that
questions?
case, we'd be negligent to ignore it.
Well, we learned a lesson on another development. So
Right.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
let's not go down that road. So with the modifications of removing Janice's parcel strip, as well as the change in condition to allow for the garbage storage inside garages. I don't have Kevin's entire memo, so if there's anything in there that we need to add, other than the standard wording.
Yeah.
Is everyone
I
comfortable
can't
with this?
remember.
Yeah.
I can look it up.
I think it's okay. With the modification on the Eagle's Nest issue, I think you're in good shape.
That's great. In
Thanks,
that
George.
case, it's time for vote. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Sean Cosgrove,
Aye.
Frank DeAndrea,
Aye.
Amy Stein,
Yes.
Alan Brown.
Muted.
Alan, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, buddy. That's a hand. Give me one of these. There you go. Alan, Richard Wallace,
Yes.
Scott Edmund,
Yes.
and I'll also vote for it. Russ, Seamus, thank you for all your time.
Good job.
And thank you
Thank you for your time.
your detail as always, and your willingness to sit and answer questions from people.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for
Have
the
a good night.
revisions to
Thank
the
you, Jim.
public.
Good luck.
access.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
George, this doesn't relate to this, but I did get a letter from the Comans. Did you get copied?
Yes.
What do we want to do about this? I mean, I
don't know.
replied back to an individual that, so basically, as you all recall, the Comans have a property on Old Sachem's Head Road that's next to a development where the landscape buffers have not been installed. We have a bond from the town out at this point. It's past the planting season, so the buffers can't be installed at this point. And they had requested that we withhold a certificate of occupancy until that's done. I casually replied that I didn't think that that was a reasonable accommodation, but that we
Hey,
have-
Phil, is this Benton?
Yeah.
Benton.
Benton Knoll.
Benton Knowles, right?
Well, Phil, refresh our memory as to what was supposed to happen versus what has happened.
So there was supposed to be a landscape plan with a buffer, and basically, as you might know, that construction project has gone on for a number, like 11 years now, I think. And obviously, living next to a construction site for that long a period of time has created some hard feelings. Let's just say that. And that we now have George, we have a bond for the installation of the buffer. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, and as you know, our normal practice is to accept bonds during the season when the planting can't actually be accomplished. And I don't know whether we have the authority not to do that. With respect to that particular letter, what my plan was to discuss it with Chuck Andrus, our counsel, to determine whether we have the authority to deny the C of O, notwithstanding the fact that there is a suitable bond to guarantee the completion of the work. So it's still an issue that, you know, needs a little further clarification. I also wanted to go over it all with Kevin as our expert in landscaping and similar work to make sure see where he is with regard to all of this.
Well,
I would just say, planning will not, be suitable probably until March, George?
April.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I just think we have to get our ducks in a row, because this development company has been flaunting the conditions of the approval that we gave them a long time ago for years and years and years, and coming back before us again and again and again. And I just think it's time to.
And that's kind of what I said. I said, look, we can't, there's nothing that can be done right now. So holding up someone's CO, in my opinion, again, we can get Chuck's input as well. It does nothing but create more bad blood between neighbors. The people can't move into their house. The town doesn't get the tax revenue. I mean, there's a whole cascade.
So how many more COs is he looking for? Is there only one more or two more?
Well, he's looking for one right now, and then there's one more house. It's there's a building permit pending right now for one more house, and there may be one more after that. I'm not sure.
I think that's right.
I think Phil's point is basically, what we've kind of said all along is that the best thing to happen would be for this project to be completed, and then everyone will begin to settle into what is ultimately going to be the permanent situation. But so that there's some effort here on the part of the adjoining property to punish the applicant rather than to insist. He's not insisting that we require the planting right now. I mean, we could require that he put the plants in today, and he could try to do that, which would be totally counterproductive.
No.
So we're between a rock and a hard place in a lot of
I don't think we're talking about punishment. I think we're talking about I
think we'd be punishing the person who wants to move in more than we're punishing the guy. So I don't really feel that that's a good weapon. And we did bifurcate the bond in a way that allows us to at least have some money on the table for the plantings and things. Correct? Isn't that what we did?
Yes, that's the whole point of the bond. The bond is designed to have the money necessary to do the work should the developer not do it. And so that's why I wanted to get together with Kevin and go over all that to make sure we have the right amount.
If you can get us an update for our next meeting,
Yes,
and so, because I don't like not responding to people, but.
No, I definitely, I agree. I mean, I had a long meeting with Attorney Ainsworth a couple of weeks ago, which I suggested that he write this letter to document his concerns. He was basically asking me to withhold granting the C of O until he actually puts the plantings in. And I said, you know, that's not our normal practice. And if he wanted us to do something differently, he should document it in writing, which is what he's done.
Okay, but my question is, when the final CO, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 COs, you know, that are available to this development, when the final CO is granted, does that automatically release our bond, or do we still have the bond?
Well, only if all the work has been done. If there's still landscaping work to be done, then we would call the bond.
Okay, well then I agree with, you know, Bill, you know, you're right, you know.
I mean, if you want to punish the guy, you don't give him a building permit if that's the punishment end of it.
Right.
So if you could check with Chuck
Yes.
and Kevin and
Yeah.
update us at the next, that'd be
You'll
great.
hear more about that for sure.
Thank you.
Did anyone have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Would you
Yes.
like to make a motion to approve?
You don't have the minutes.
We don't have minutes.
No, I didn't send them to you because they weren't ready.
Okay. In that case, we will suspend approval of our minutes from our last meeting to our next meeting.
Yep.
Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Before you do that, Phil, let me update you on a couple of issues related to staffing and also some reminders about upcoming meetings. On the 19th, you have your regular meeting. And don't forget on the 18th, let me check the
No, it's the
19th is
19th.
your regular meeting. The next night, the 20th, you have the special meeting, which is also going to be a Zoom meeting, which is the public workshop on the zoning code. It's not a public hearing, but it is a special meeting of the commission, and Glenn is going to be entertaining comments from the public. We've solicited comments from many of our routine engineers, architects, et cetera. We've sent them copies of all of the proposed new ordinance and invited them to comment. We've also tried to generate some publicity through the Courier. Hopefully they're going to do an article, and we have some notices on the town website about this meeting. So hopefully the public will feel comfortable offering whatever comments they might want to offer at this particular meeting. So I just wanted to make sure that you all have that on your calendar. And if you do hear from anybody who wants to weigh in on this thing, remind them of that date. Also, I wanted to give an update on what's happening with our staff. As I think most of you know, or maybe you don't, but I'm retiring at the end of January. We've had three iterations on trying to hire a zoning enforcement officer, all of which have failed. The town is now in the process of taking some steps to on an interim basis provide services to you and to the community with regard to all of these issues. We're negotiating a contract with a consultant who will provide services both to help us recruit a new town planner and a zoning enforcement officer, and also to provide the services necessary for the commission to do its job, and also to process permits and plan reviews, et cetera. So we are trying to deal with this employment situation as best we can. Fortunately for me, I will be retiring, but I'm also going to be available after the end of January to assist where needed on a fairly limited basis. So that's a brief update on where things stand in that regard.
I would
just like to add, and maybe Phil was going to say this, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I just think that it is important to note that there are any number of towns throughout Connecticut that are dealing with this same staffing issue, and you know, we're going to have to be flexible and, you know, use our imagination and try to find some expertise we can. And I think this consulting firm that we've identified and already interviewed could help us through a period where we might not have permanent staff. So I just wanted to mention that.
And I would just push back on George's statement that we had 3 failures. I would say that we dodged 3 bullets. That, in my opinion, the potential candidates that we had would not have served us to our best interest. So
Yeah, I didn't mean.
I'd rather make one good decision but a number of bad ones.
Yeah,
No,
right.
I didn't mean to suggest otherwise, Phil. I think you're absolutely right. It's a very difficult environment to be hiring people. And zoning, these jobs are very specialized and require unique personalities, especially the zoning enforcement officer job. So it's,
Well, George, you're very special.
I know.
Yeah,
Yes.
you are special.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Would someone like to make
Thank
a
you.
motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Make a motion. Second.
Motion and a second by a show of hands.